Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to the September 8th, 2023 Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship meeting. We are live on YouTube from Littleton Baptist Church in Littleton, Colorado. Welcome y'all. Just a reminder, we meet the second Friday of every month at 7 o'clock year round. So with that, Brian, would you like to do an opening prayer?
Sure. Hey, great.
All right. Why don't you come on over here?
Okay, dear Heavenly Father, we come to you in the name of Jesus, and we do thank you so much for your abundant blessings. We thank you for the gift of life and this wonderful creation. And we do thank you so much, mainly for what Jesus did for us on the cross. And we do pray that you would help us to speak this truth clearly to those around us so that we can help make an impact on their eternity. And we pray that everything would go well tonight, and this would be a blessing to those who watch. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, thank you. So, I have an opening scripture, and then we'll get right to it. Okay, this is 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 through 7. First of all, you must understand that in the last days, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, "Where is this coming he promised? Ever since our fathers died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of the creation." But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens existed and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also, the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. And I might have a little bit more to say about that after the question and answer session, when I do the rest of the announcements after the rest of the meeting. So with that, I would like to introduce our speaker, Brian Lauer. He is a dynamic speaker who has given creation talks at churches, schools, colleges, and camps from Minnesota to Florida. Some talks, radio interviews, and pictures can be seen at https://webs.com or on BitChute and YouTube channels. Let's see, https www.bitchute.com/channel/ some bunch of letters.
I'll take care of that. I'll let him go.
Okay, so with that, I introduce our keynote speaker here, Brian Lauer.
All right, well, thank you so much. I'm so glad you guys are here tonight. It is going to be a blessing for you. I really believe so. It is good to be here. This is kind of a bucket list for me. I've heard all about Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship when I'm listening to Real Science Radio. And I listened to the Grand Canyon ones over and over and over as I was coming down here from Minnesota. And it was a lot of fun studying this thing. And for those who don't know much about me, I'll give you a little bit of what I'm doing. And it's kind of a tribute to Bob Enyart. Because I can only do this because I saw him. It's like, well, if Bob can do that, I can do this. Because he went way out on the limb at times. And my favorite one is when he called up Jack Horner and said, "Hey, I'll give you $20,000 if you carbon date that bone." And it was so much fun to watch Jack Horner squirm. So yeah, he was a tremendous encouragement and example for me. And I do have a website called solidifyyourfaith.weebly.com. That's WEEBLY.com. And the other one was going to be taken down eventually. So my brother said, "Well, what does Weebly mean?" And I said, "It means I'm cheap." It's a free website, and the less I spend on my website, the more I have to do what God wants me to do. And here are some of the things that God's had me do. I gave a creation talk at St. Cloud State. And I don't know if you know this, but St. Cloud State University is not a Bible college. So the Atheist Club was there, and it was a pretty fun night. This was the talk. Who's your daddy? Evolution of Theory and Crises, guaranteed not to make a monkey out of you. And we did other ones, evolution versus science, and we'd have these flyers all over campus. And this was a talk that I gave at Florida, State College in Florida. There was 4 or 5 classes that were encouraged to go. They got Chick-fil-A when I was all done, and 120 some students and professors there. And I asked the advisor who invited me to come, I said, do you want me to share the gospel? He says, that's why we're doing this. So I was their hired gun to say what they would get them fired. So anybody who wants a hired gun, here I am. And it was a lot of fun. And you can see that talk on my DVD out there. I've got these DVDs on the table. They're a thank you for a donation of any amount. And so if you just, any amount, that's a thank you. And there's 3 talks on there. There's Behind Enemy Lines also. These are 2 more motivational talks, because we got enough information. We just need to start doing something with it. And this one we take a look at the situation in America. What's the mission? What should we do? And how do we execute it? And you also learn about an 81-foot granite monument that points to God and the Bible on government land. So that's a fun one. And then another talk that's on that DVD is Get in the Game. It's like the halftime of your life, and I'm the coach. I relate it to basketball, and we play Pictionary, and I guarantee you've never seen a talk like this one. So again, those are a thank you for a donation of any amount. I got a real burden to reach the college students. And I'll go there and I'll have my questions of the day, and this one is, where's your faith? Nothing exploded or God created? And that's actually hanging up on one of the posters right now. And so I meet the students, we get them organized, and then help them start a Grace Campus Fellowship we did. Then we have access to their facilities. And so we had Creation Science 101. We would show a movie every week, a creation movie. See, my perspective is you need to see both sides if you want to think, but they're not getting both sides in the science class. And so we did that. The tagline there was explore with open minds, not limited to theories of blind chance and random collisions of atoms. And another one we had up there was enjoy the freedom to think outside the intolerant dogma of materialism. And we have these flyers and posters all over the place. Science diversity nights. They're all for diversity. Hey, how about some diversity of thought? Let's get some of those creation journals in there. And again, and it's not even so much the events, I think. It's how we can put our posters up there. So this is what's hanging at St. Cloud State right now. You got the drag night on the left, you got the LGBT promos on the right, and right in the middle there's our club. It's like, and there it says, hey, where does your path lead? Come out to church and get a free meal this Sunday. And so if they want to jump off the cliff, they're going to have to shove us out of the way to do it. We're going to point them in another direction. And I've helped other colleges. This is a community college about an hour away. I helped them start a Bible club. I helped a private college start a creation club so that they would know when speakers like this come on campus, because they never knew. And then I almost got a club started at Liberty. Had a table there, had 55 emails of students that wanted to know about our events, had 8 or 9 students who wanted to run the organization. And Liberty, if anybody's watching online right now, if you have any connections with Liberty, you have the easiest club in the world to run and the most effective. Because Liberty's paying people to come in and speak at the convocations every day. Just have a creationist come in every month. And before they talk to the students in the morning, have them talk to the community at night. Invite the community, the churches, the schools, everybody to come into Liberty and hear the creation message. So then you can be a beacon of creation light in that dark part of the state. And we had it all set up on a golden platter, and then the advisor dropped the ball. I don't know how he messed it up, but it never got off the ground. I couldn't believe it. Everything was right there. And so I'm starting to help communities start creation clubs. All you need is somebody who understands it and a place to meet. And we were showing our creation club, our creation movies at the public library. And that was a lot of fun. And then COVID hit, so that kind of, we're starting that from scratch on a lot of these again. But I think there should be a creation booth at every fair in the country. That's where I am. I'm trying to get a local creation club going, and I got one going. And I love doing these questions of the day. I'm doing a survey. That one there is what came first, the chicken or the egg? And that opens up, I'd like to ask a question point to the Bible. And the chicken just barely. The next was, how did life begin? Somehow or God, because I have a textbook from the college and they explain life. Somehow, despite the harsh environment, first living organisms appear. And And so God won that one in a landslide. And then the next one was, did hydrogen and helium turn into people? Because that's what they believe, hydrogen and helium from the Big Bang. It's like, here we are, do you believe that turned into people? And 52 people said yeah. 161 said no, and 45 said, I don't know. And so then we can help them realize that they don't have it all figured out. And then, what are you? A mutated animal or made in the image of God? And so, and 98, again, image of God won. And this is great news because they just think of all the trillions, billions, if not billions of dollars they put in brainwashing people to think about evolution. And it's not working. Even on campus, this is at a community college, and it was 42 believed in creation and 17 thought theistic and 21 thought evolution. So creation won by double at a community college. It went to St. Cloud State again. And I knew evolution would win, but I thought it would be a landslide. It wasn't. It was 43 to 39. I did this at when I was in Pennsylvania, Penn State L2 campus. I just love doing this stuff. It's so much fun. I did it at the University of Illinois Chicago too. And again, it's a lot closer than you think it would be. It was 17 to 13, evolution. And that's about how it was at the University of Illinois Chicago too. At that time I just went around with a notebook. So anyhow, in our town it had an event like this. They had Christian band, gospel music, and I had a table there, and I asked people, hey, when did dinosaurs live? Millions of years or thousands of years ago? 8151 said millions, so they don't have a biblical interpretation of dinosaurs. I mean, how did life begin? They had that one figured out, but they don't know how to explain dinosaurs with the Bible. And dinosaurs are the gateway drug to evolution, millions of years, and evolution is the great gateway drug for atheism. And so they're aiming at the kids young, so I'm going where they are too. I speak at VBSs, and it's a lot of fun. This one was, I did their whole curriculum. Can you do the curriculum for our VBS? And those kids are not going to believe in evolution. And the pastor emailed or Facebook me and said, Sunday was the best VBS we've ever had. And so I've been doing that wherever God opens the door, and I don't know if you've heard about this stuff, but our freedoms are under attack too. And so I give freedom talks. I was invited to speak in South Dakota, and I had Exposing Tyranny. And that was professionally recorded, and that site's not up now anymore. So I put it up on my Rumble channel called Education, Not Indoctrination, if you want to see that. And I was invited out to Pennsylvania to do a Christian apologetics seminar. They had me do all the worksheets and all that stuff for that, and that was a tremendous blessing. But on the way, a pastor asked me to do a creation science revival. He'd give me Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I said, how about we do a creation Sunday? And then a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll do a revival of truth that's been censored. He said, yeah, go ahead. And so Monday night, we took a look behind the vaccine curtain. And this is before COVID, and we got to hear what vaccine experts were saying under oath. Very eye-opening. Tuesday, we looked at the COVID corruption. They're trying to drum that up again. We have to learn from the past. And then Wednesday, we looked at how tyrants are going to try to control us. They're trying to put in place digital currency, climate credits, vaccine passports. We have to be aware of that. And this is a DVD also, Monday Night's Talk. That's available for a donation of any amount. But you can see all these on YouTube or Rumble. So if you're more interested in creation, you take the creation one. If you're more interested in our freedoms, take the blue one. But you can see them all. I've started a Rumble channel and it's called Revival of Truth, where you can see all of these. I also had a booth at the fair, a Revival of Truth booth at the fair. That had some interesting conversations. And I was interviewed, and did you guys know that Real Science Radio has a Rumble channel now? It just started today because the interview they did with me, it was titled, Should I Vaccinate My Baby? And I'm a big proponent of, hey, get all the information and make your own decision. But we're not getting all the information. And YouTube censored it. They took it down. And so I guess I'm so proud of myself. You know, that's the fourth video that's been taken down. And so they don't like the truth getting out, apparently. And so I was interviewed by Real Science Radio last year. It was the Great Reset and Hackable Animals. And we talked about what the tyrants have in place. And somebody emailed Fred and said, such a blast, or such a treat listening to Fred and Brian. And he goes on to say that he's binge watching Solidify Your Faith videos. I can't stop, they're great. And so that's a tremendous encouragement. And a friend of mine had the same thing. He stayed up all night watching my videos, and he was so mad at me because he didn't go to sleep. All right. But that's not why you came. You came for Grand Canyon answers. Okay, they can't explain it. And I was even able to I had the hydroplate book in the beginning, and I went up to a professor at St. Cloud State and said, and she's geology. I said, you don't have a theory that can explain Grand Canyon. Here's one that works. Because my brother-in-law, he went through a geology class there. They spent a week looking at the different theories about Grand Canyon, and none of them worked. And then on Friday, the professor said, there's one theory we haven't talked about. Anybody know what it is? It says Noah's flood. He said, you're right, but we can't talk about it. Okay, so they're only getting one side over and over, and even though they don't work, it doesn't work. So here's the outline for tonight. It's going to be, we're going to take some Grand Canyon facts, we're going to look at the facts, ask some questions, see how the government tries to answer those questions, and then give you the real answers, and then do a quick review. And the key to Grand Canyon is bulging and cracking. We're going to say that about 3 times, bulging and cracking. So here are the facts, but we have to figure out what a fact is. This is from their textbook. It says, separate facts from conclusions. A fact is a verifiable piece of information, whereas a conclusion is a judgment based upon the facts. The news media often mix facts with conclusions without indicating which is which. And that's the most hypocritical statement I've ever heard. The science book does that all the time. Whenever they say millions or billions of years, they're mixing their interpretation with the facts. Okay, so let's take a look at Grand Canyon. Okay, it's a fact. Grand Canyon exists. Has anybody ever been there? Anybody? Oh, look at the hands. Oh, yeah. So we can verify it. It's there, right? A big hole. Okay, whoa, what happened? Yeah, so Grand Canyon exists. Oh, my. Well, we'll get to that later. Yeah, it exists. So you've seen it. Have you been out on that thing? No? Have you been down those paths? Yeah, I was talking to a 65-year-old woman. She said, they tell you nose on toes. If you want to look around, stop and look around. But if you're walking, keep your nose on your toes because you don't want to trip out there. And how about this? You want to do a donkey path down there? Oh, you've done it. Wow, you're brave. I don't know if you could pay me enough, but you can see this on YouTube. Grand Canyon Mule Rides. Sherry somebody or other. Guthier or something. But yeah, you can see what that would be like. It's like, oh my. So anyhow, this is more my speed. Anybody done that? I used to teach kayaking. Yeah, so this is how I'd like to see the river. But anyhow, what the facts are, evolutionist conclusion is that it formed slowly by a little water and a lot of time. And the creationist conclusion is that no, it formed quickly with a lot of water and a little time. So which one makes the most sense? And the evolutionists are always trying to erase that line between the facts and their conclusion. They'll mix it in over and over again, and you'll see that in their websites. So here's some facts about Grand Canyon. It's 277 miles long, average width 300 feet, average minimum width 75, average depth is 40 feet, deepest part is 85. Bunch of facts. Those are verifiable. But then it goes on to say they're conclusions. Millions of years, geologic column, those are all conclusions. Those are not facts. Those are not verifiable. And what I wanted to know was, what's the elevation where the river enters and where it ends? That's what I wanted to find. And I couldn't find it on their website anywhere. You know, they did tell me that this Phantom Ranch is at 2,400 feet. I thought, well, where's that? It's right in the middle. That doesn't tell me anything. But it does tell me it drops 2,000 feet. The thing that website did do is it linked to this topographical map. And this was so much fun because wherever you click, it tells you the elevation. So I clicked, I clicked above Glen Canyon Dam, and it's 3,600 feet. I clicked below Glen Canyon Dam, and it's 3,100 feet. And then it flows through the canyon. The walls rise up a mile above, mind you. And then it flows out. I went down to Lake Mead, and it was 1,200 feet. Okay, so now here's some questions that you can ask the teachers or the guides, because you're there to learn. And ask these questions, because a lot of them they can't answer. And if they can't answer them, hopefully it wakes them up at night. And you're just putting a little pebble in their shoe to have them think about other things. Because, okay, how did the river flow uphill? They cut the canyon. See, that river flows in at 3,100 feet, and it goes out at 1,200 feet, and in the middle, the canyon rises over a mile above the river. And rivers don't flow uphill, and they admit that. So how did that little river flow uphill for millions of years to cut that canyon? It didn't. It didn't. And why didn't the river flow around the Kayabat Plateau? We'll get into that in a little more depth. And then there's tip and bevel. Or why are the layers so flat? You look out there, they're just flat as a pancake, like somebody put down a plumb line and just laid it all out. Okay, and why isn't there any erosion? It's going to rain sometime, right? But there's no erosion marks. And this is a real tough one. How come there's slanted layers underneath flat layers? How do you explain that one? And this is Walt Brown standing in front of something that's real hard to explain by millions of years. Then why are 7 of the 12 geologic columns, layers of the geologic column missing? That's a tough one. Well, they say the top 5 got eroded away. Yeah, but what about the 2 at the bottom there? What happened to them? They're missing millions of years, and I'll show you how they try to explain that. And how did a river cut a canyon 18 miles wide? That little river. That makes no sense. And how do you get side canyons? These are canyons just as deep without a river. You know, if the river cut the Grand Canyon, there's no river for the side canyon. They can't explain it. And why are they longer to the north and then to the south? And there's a guy, he used to give tours there. And he'd point out to the canyon, he says, yeah, I dug that. And a little kid asked him, hey, where'd you put the dirt? And that question haunted him the rest of his life. Where is that dirt? There's 800 cubic miles of sediment that are missing. And keep in mind, if you took all the other rivers combined in the world, they only have 300 cubic miles of erosion. And yet that little Grand Canyon has 800. Something very special happened there. And to cut the Grand Canyon, you have to do the Great Denudation. That's where 2,000 cubic miles of sediment have to be removed from above the Grand Canyon before that even starts. And how do you do that? What force is going to move 2,000 cubic miles of sediment? And how does this 5 to 10 rock get raised into sedimentary rock? And you can kind of see it's the same type of rock that's at the bottom right, and yet it got lifted up into the sedimentary rock. They don't talk about that on their website. This is at Isis Temple, there's the rock, and there's Walt Brown's grandsons, and there's the logistics of it if you want to check it out yourself. Okay, and then the inner gorge. How come that river cut into solid crystalline granite rock instead of spreading out and wiping away the softer sedimentary rock? And then what force crushes basement rock? This is the Vishnu schist. It got crushed. How's that going to work? And this is a real technical one. I wouldn't expect anybody to know this, but I learned this from, let's see, Andrew Snelling on In the Beginning. I don't know if you've seen that one. But he talks about, in the Grand Canyon, you got the Hermit Formation right underneath the Coconino Sandstone. So Coconino Sandstone lands on the Hermit Foundation. It's right on the Hermit Foundation. You see that? Then he says 70 miles away, Hermit Foundation is separated from the Coconino Sandstone by the Schnebly Hill Formation, which is like 800 to 1,000 feet of sediment. How does that happen? It's just a big mental construct, and they'll just sweep anything that doesn't fit it underneath the carpet. And that's not in their website either. Okay, and how did the funnel form? Anybody see the funnel? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's in the upper right. The funnel is the key to everything, because that funnel used to be connected. Vermilion Cliffs and the Echo Cliffs used to be connected. As you're driving up to Grand Canyon, it's the same layers on the right and the same layers on the left, and they're 12 miles apart. So you got these 2,000-foot cliffs on the right side, or Vermilion has 2,800-foot cliffs. Echo Cliffs are 2,300 feet. And then you get this pothole. This pothole on a 2,000-foot cliff. How do potholes form? That's when a rock gets in this hole and a bunch of fast-moving water, and it just keeps it going round and round, and it digs down this pothole. So how did the pothole form 3,300 feet above the river on a 2,000-foot cliff that's 4.25 miles away from the river? That's a tough one. But we're going to explain for that to you. And this I got from Walt Brown's book. It says, why was water flowing so rapidly this high and on the upper edge of a 2,000-foot cliff? Yeah, that's a tough one. And these barbed canyons. My brother-in-law said this is something they could never explain. Because the barbed canyons, the land is sloping to the northeast, and yet the river is flowing to the southwest. And I played with that elevation tool. So it's 5,500 feet on the top of that barb, and then it's 5,300 at the bottom. So it dropped 200 feet. This one dropped 200 feet. It's dropping about 200 to 100 feet at each barb, and it keeps dropping. So it's all sloping to the top right, and yet the river's going to the bottom left. That doesn't happen anywhere else. Rivers don't do that. Something very special happened. And why didn't it flow around the Kaibab Plateau? Again, I had way too much fun with this thing. There's the Kaibab Plateau. River cuts right through it. And what's the elevation there? It's 9,000 feet, 8,300 feet, 7,300 feet at the top, right at the edge of Grand Canyon. And then you jump the canyon and it's 7,000 feet. So that river has to go 7,000 feet up there if it wants to carve it. But why didn't it flow this way? 4,800 feet, 53. It should have just gone right around the southern edge. It shouldn't have gone up through the top of it. Or the northern edge. It could have flown easily around the northern edge too. But it didn't. It flowed right through the highest part of that Kaibab Plateau. And what force raises a plateau a mile in the air? That's a tough one for them. And how did Red Butte form? That's 1,000 feet of sediment capped with the volcanic rock. Okay, now here's the government answers. Get ready for some stories. And they admit it. It says, the story of how Grand Canyon came to be, blah, blah, blah. The story begins about 2 billion years ago, blah, blah, blah. It's a story, it's not science. And he did the same thing at the College General Ed textbook. What does this say? The origin of the geosphere, that's Earth, is the story of the birth of our planet. The story begins in an immense dust cloud. Okay, there's stories. This isn't science. They say it right at the beginning, and if you don't catch it right at the beginning, you're going to think it's science. And it's not, because science is observable, testable, repeatable, falsifiable. Okay, like Glenn Collins, he was at Ohio State, and he asked a bunch of physicists, hey, what's the difference between science and science fiction? And they couldn't answer it, because they're believing in the Big Bang and multiverses and all that stuff that's not observable. And they couldn't answer it. Oh yeah, and speaking of Ohio State, Ravi Zacharias was going to speak there, and a driver was bringing him around and says, hey, there's the very first postmodern building in the world. And Ravi says, what's a postmodern building? He said, well, the architect didn't think there was any meaning to life, so it should all be random. So they got pillars that hold up nothing and the stairways that go nowhere. And Ravi said, did he design the foundation that way? No way, it's not going to get approved. Okay, so they live in, like Fred said, they live in a constant state of hypocrisy. They really do. Okay, so this is back to the National Park website. It says, scientists know that the Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon. There's no way the river carved the canyon, but that's the chapter they aren't going to throw away. And it goes on to say that the Kaibab Plateau, the highest point through which the river gingerly slices, poses a problem for geologists. And what's that? We talked about it. Water certainly doesn't flow uphill. So they admit it. But they go on to say, while keeping these few accepted chapters in the Colorado's history book in mind, the river carved the canyon. That's the chapter they're not going to throw away. So then they make some other theories. And so why are hundreds of millions of years of sediment missing? Hey, a scientist or a geologist hasn't figured out. The mystery of the Grand Canyon's missing billions of years may be solved thanks to a new tectonic model. Notice the fuzzy word, may. They overhype a lot of things. It says the great unconformity has perplexed geologists since it was first described nearly 150 years ago. The 500 million year old Tapete sandstone is directly overlying the 1.2 or 1.4 to 1.8 billion year old Vishnu schist. How does that happen? It's a problem for them. But it goes on to this. Think of the red bluffs and cliffs of the Grand Canyon as Earth's history textbook. If you scale down the canyon's rock face, you can jump back almost 2 billion years into the planet's past. Isn't that neat? Right? But that textbook is also missing pages. In some areas, there's more than 1 billion years worth of rocks that have disappeared. So they got a problem. And here's the solution. Now watch for fuzzy words. Okay, the team reports that a series of small yet violent faulting events may have rocked the region during the breakup of the ancient supercontinent called Rhododendron, or whatever they call it. The resulting havoc likely tore up the ground around the canyon, causing rocks and sediment to wash away. Okay, so they've got may have and likely. And that's just a fairy tale for grown-ups, kind of like their evolution theory. So here's how this is their website. This is 4 theories. None of them work. The Little Grand Canyon River Hypotheses. And this is what they admit. In order for this theory to work, the ancient and the ancestral Colorado River would have needed to flow eastward over the Continental Divide. Well, I'll throw that one out. This is the northwest flowing river hypothesis. In order for this to work, the Kaibab Plateau couldn't look quite like it does now. And there aren't any sedimentary deposits found to support the theory. So throw that one out. Here's the spillover theory, the catastrophic draining of ancient lakes. Now that one's true, and I'm going to show you that, but they got the lakes in the wrong spot. The Colorado River was temporarily dammed up behind the Kaibab Plateau. That's baloney. It could have floated on the bottom, it could have floated on the top. The lake wasn't there. There's no way. And then you got this one about a collapse of underground karst systems. But if you want to hear what's wrong with all of these, go into Real Science Radio, rsr.org, and just search Grand Canyon Month. And you'll get a list of the problems of the river caused the canyon, a list of problems of how the flood caused it, and a list of other problems too. And also, and Walt Brown, he did this in his book. He's got all the theories there. And that's how did they explain this feature or that feature? Red means not a chance, yellow means maybe, and green is, yeah, right on. And it's green all the way down his theory, but it's red almost everywhere else. Red or yellow, there's not a green one out there. And then it goes on, and we're going to hit on why it's here and not everywhere in the world. What's the force and the energy and the mechanism? Marble Canyon, side canyons, barbed canyons, inner gorge, Colorado Plateau, Kaibab Plateau, and tip layers below unconformity. We're going to hit all of them, so listen fast. Okay. Conclusions are based on the geologic column. That's why they're all off. They're believing this millions and billions of years BS, baloney. And let's keep in mind, the geologic column, that was finalized in 1879 with the layers and the names. And 1879, anybody know what was invented then? The light bulb. The light bulb. This is with horse and buggy technology that they're making this modern science. It wasn't radiometric dating. And then this vision was this. Look, this is their website, how it used to be. When I gave this talk before, this was on their website. I updated my slides. This one's not there. It says layers from the Cambrian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian, and Permian periods are present. Pretty straightforward until you think about what they're leaving out. It's like, hey, why'd they skip over the Silurian or Ordovician layers at the bottom? They're there. You know, they conveniently left it out. It's a very deceptive statement. So I'm glad it's not on the website anymore. But they're trying to brainwash the kids too. This is learning for kids. Over millions of years, these bones, shells, footprints, and leaves and other remains turned into stone. Footprints turning into stone over millions of years. How long do footprints last today? And Randy Galuza, if he'd be in college, he'd say, hey, what process is turning footprints into stone or bones into fossils all around the world today? You know, it doesn't work. And then speaking of fossils, is that dead deer on the side of the road going to turn into fossils? You guys get dead deer on the side of the road? What do you get? Armadillos? What's the roadkill here? Anything? What? Raccoons. Okay, is that dead raccoon going to turn into a fossil? No, it's going to get scavenged. It's going to decompose. The only way a fossil forms is if it's buried rapidly. Therefore, if any layer if there's any layer that has fossils in it, it was laid down rapidly. And that's the whole geologic column. That whole geologic column was laid down rapidly. And they find these fossils in the Grand Canyon. These are nautiloids. And Steve Austin did a book on it. He did a really good job of documenting where he found all these nautiloids. And I was able to ride on a bus one time at one of his events, and he said that he showed it, he submitted, this is where all your nautiloids are, and they revoked his permit. There's a big, strong bias of anything that's going to point to creation. But they found, let's see, 1 per square yard. There's probably billions of them, all the way to Las Vegas. And 15% of them are standing upright. 15% standing upright. And how, you know how fast that layer forms around them? If you do the math on it, it's at the narrowest, it's 500 feet thick, and it's supposed to be 50 million years, so 50 million divided by 500 feet equals 100,000 years over 1 foot. It takes that long, so how about an inch divided by 12? 8,000 years for an inch to form. That thing's going to stand on its head for tens of thousands of years? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And this page isn't there either, but it poses a really good question. Perhaps the biggest question of all, how the Colorado chose the course and began carving the Colorado River, still awaits a clear answer. I got it. I got the clear answer. I got it. Thanks to Walt Brown and Brian Nickel. Here's the Grand Canyon answers. And keep in mind, bulging and cracking. We're going to say that a lot. That's the key. What's the key to Grand Canyon? Bulging and cracking. All right. Okay, here we go. It's going to be a lot of fun. So to get this rolling, you have to lay down the layers of sediment before the river can cut it, before it can get eroded away. And so we're just going to jump halfway through the hydroplate theory. And these continents are sliding, and I don't have time to explain why, but if you're interested in that, go into my Solidify Your Faith YouTube channel and you'll be able to see it. Also, we've got a hydroplate conference coming up September 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, and it's online, so you got no excuse not to watch it. And so I encourage you to watch it. We got some great. Fred's going to be speaking, and the one you really don't want to miss is Kevin Lee's comment talk on that Saturday. So again, take one of the flyers in the back. But anyway, the continents, I can't explain why, but North America is sliding rapidly to the west, and it's sliding friction-free on water because it bulged in the Atlantic. So it's sliding, and it's going to keep sliding till it runs out of lubrication or meets resistance. And I want to thank Brian Nickel for these slides. He must have spent months putting together these graphics. And so it makes it very simple. So the continent sliding meets resistance, and so it's going to melt a lot of rock underneath, and it's going to force the mountains to rise up. And it's also going to crush that granite. That's how we got the Vishnu schist. This is actually Gunnison Canyon. Anybody been there? Yeah, you got this marble-shaped granite there, and that's quartzite that melted in there. It got crushed. And for scale, those are 15-foot trees on top that got crushed, and that's the same thing that happened in the basement rock of Grand Canyons. And Vishnu schist looks just like that. So you had a big force crushing it. Those are the continents coming to a screeching halt. But the bottom stops, but the top layers keep going. And so the momentum keeps going, and then it shears off the bottom ones. Hence you got flat layers on slanted layers. That's how that happened. And how did they get to be so evenly mixed together? Okay, now there's different theories on that. Some people say liquefaction, when the continents are vibrating and the water's there and the waves are going across, and that will separate things. And somebody asked me, well, would that separate the crossbedding? It's like, well, I don't know about that. But they also could be laid down separated as they're sliding. That's what Henry Morris saw in Minnesota. They got this place where you can see the Mississippi River flowing, and it laid down layers of sediment. Okay, so there's other ways that you can get, but at any rate, they were laid down rapidly, and they were laid down very sorted, very well. And so you got here that it must have buckled, and that must have slid over top and sheared it off. And how do you get that quartzite rock up there? A piece of that quartzite breaks off, and that force is going so fast with that mud, it starts moving it, and it raises it up. And hence you got that rock, 5 to 10 tons up there. Evolutionists can't explain it, and they ignore it on their website. And you ignore it at your own peril. Okay, and so then what force causes a plateau to rise in the air? Well, the mountains rose up, so you got a big mass on a small base. It's going to sink in. Well, if it sinks in, something has to go up. So the plateau is block fault going up. It's not all at once. It's just where it gets weak, it's going to shoot up. And then if something else gets weak, it's going to shoot up. And so it's going to be very unstable. And then some lava might sneak through some of that cracks and get to the top of the sediment and make a little layer up there. And then when a big wave comes by, or a lot of erosion comes by, it's not going to take away the lava on top. That's too hard, so it's going to erode around it. Hence, you got Red Butte. Didn't Brian Nickel do just a great job with those graphics? Okay, so now that's going to start the Grand Canyon. You need to move 800 cubic miles, but before you can even think of doing that, you got to move 2,000 cubic miles. How's that going to happen? What force is going to move that? Okay, and that's where the funnel comes in. Okay, the funnel's 12 miles wide. And where it's 12 miles wide, just think of everything above that red line as sediment. It's part of a dam, and it's holding back these layers of rock. And Brian Nickel took a rock. He's driving up Echo Canyons, and he's looking across at Vermilion Canyons. And there's a 10-mile gap, or 12-mile gap. This is when he's about halfway up. You can see the Vermilion Cliffs, and you see that crack in the middle? That's where the Colorado is flowing through that crack. Okay, how come that canyon cracked right there? Okay, well, it got washed away. Well, where did the water come from? Look at these lake beds. You see that? This is a topographical map from outer space. See that coloring? Those are lake bottoms. And so you had two really big lakes, Grand Lakes and Hopi Lakes, and you have all these unusual features, either in the lake or pretty close next to it, with Bryce Canyon and Zion and Arches and Monument Valley. And also, it's just all over, all these very unusual features, and that's a whole nother talk for Brian Snavely. You should have him come in, or Mike Snavely. He's really good at explaining that. So, but I'll just point at two of them. Okay, this is arches. So you got these arches, and you did a show on it. You know, these arches that are falling, at least, you know, averaging 1 a year, maybe even 2, but we don't see arches being formed, like you said on your radio show. And so, yeah, it's the collapsing natural bridges. And it's so easy to do. It's so easy to do these talks because Real Science Radio has all the information at your fingertips. It really is. And so, collapsing natural bridges, and my favorite one was Darwin's bridge, or Darwin's arch collapsed. So again, Dr. Randy Galuza, Professor, we're losing all these arches at an alarming rate. Where do we see them being formed at an alarming rate? We don't see them being formed at all. So there was a one-time event in the past that formed them, and they're starting to break. And they're not millions of years old. And then this is also Monument Valley. Okay, there's mesas, buttes, and spires. I did a little clip out of one of my talks, the Hyderblade talk, and this is the second most viewed video that I have out there. It's only like 2 minutes long, but it explains where these mesas, buttes, and spires came from. Because underneath that, if you went down there, you'd dig through 1,400 feet of sandstone. That means that was sand at one time. That means there was maybe 1,000 feet of water. That lake was maybe 1,000 feet deep, maybe 500 feet deep. So there's a lot of pressure pushing that water into the sand. But when the lake drains, that water's going to come up. And it's going to come up to the least resistance. And if there's something hard on top, it's just going to flow out the sides. And so that's what happened. That's the bottom of a lake bed. Okay, mesas, buttes, and spires, and that's what a lot of those ones are. And then petrified forest. This one is in Hopi Lake. And this is because, well, Brown says there's a lot of silica in the water. And as the water cooled off, the silica is going to precipitate into the wood. And that's how you get the petrified forest down there. And if you want to see those, Mike Snavely does such a good job on that. He's going to speak at our club in February. You should have him come out here. Just does a great job. And he'll explain the grand staircase. Even before you get rid of the 2,000 cubic miles, you got to move all that staircase stuff, which is quite a trick. Okay, so let's take a look at Grand Lake. This is elevation 5,500 feet. It has twice as much water as Lake Michigan. It has 2,100 cubic feet of water and over 19,000 square miles. So that's Grand Lake. Hopi Lake isn't, let's take a look at the cities. Okay, if these cities were back then, cities underwater, Grand Junction would be under 1,100 feet of water. That's a lot of water. Okay, Page would be under 1,400 feet of water, or sediment. I'm not sure about that. It could have been sediment, it hadn't washed away yet. And Farmington, New Mexico would be under 350 feet of water. Okay, so that's Grand Lake. Hopi Lake's not as big, but it's 200 feet higher, or 250 feet higher. It's about the volume of Lake Huron, and it's got 840 cubic miles of water, and about 10,000 square miles. Let's take a look at those. Tuba City would have 1,000 feet of water above it. Winslow, Arizona would have 1,000 feet of water above it. And Halbrook, Arizona would have 900 feet of water. And I learned this on your Real Science Radio. Brian Nickel was talking about all this stuff. And it was just incredible the amount of research he did putting together these slides. And I'm so thankful for that. Okay, so you got two huge lakes a mile up in the air. That's called potential energy. There's a lot of potential energy up there. And just wait till it becomes kinetic energy. That's what's going to cut the Grand Canyon. So let's take a look at this funnel. Okay, now this funnel isn't a funnel when it's holding back the lake. It's holding back the lake. There's a lot more precipitation back then. I believe this happened somewhere during the Ice Age where there's more precipitation. All the basins are filling up with water. There's no outlet for this lake. Okay, and so what's going to cause it to go over the edge? And it could be, and also this is very unstable. They say there wasn't a lake, we can't see the shore. Well, that's because it's so unstable. It's getting block faulted all the time. The shore is changing all the time. No, we don't see any sediment from a lake bottom. That's because it all got washed away. Okay, but how did it overflow? Well, it could have been unstable. A block fault could have pushed it over the edge. It could have tilted a little bit. That could have done it. Or there could have, well, Brown said, there could have been another lake even higher than Grand Lake that breached and then caused this one to breach. And then once it starts going over, it's going to be really flat. It's going to be going pretty fast. Anybody ever make those sand castles at a beach or something and then you fill it up with water and it just gushes out? Just think of that right here. It's going to start going over the top. It's going to be going really fast. So there's going to be a rock that gets caught in this depression and makes a pothole right there. And then it's going to keep on eroding. It's going to keep going down, down, down until it hits the Kaibab limestone. And that's what you're standing on when you look at the Grand Canyon. The Kaibab limestone. I think that's why the flood didn't cause this canyon. Because otherwise there wouldn't be steep edges. It would all have been mud that sloped down. Also, you needed time for the Kaibab limestone to harden. So it's cutting down, hits the hard Kaibab limestone, and then it goes wider. It spreads out into that funnel. And to give you some scope for this, anybody ever been to Niagara Falls? Okay, a lot of water. There's about 3/4 miles from one. You get all that in about 3/4 miles. That's about how big Niagara Falls would be. Okay, so there's a lot of water flowing through there. From all that water cutting through, very violent. And fast flowing water can do a lot of damage. Anybody remember the challenge at Glen Canyon? Okay, for a while in 1983, sheets of plywood were all that kept the mighty Glen Canyon Dam from overflowing. Sheets of plywood. They got 2 spillways going out, and the water's just gushing. And to let you see what scale it is, there's a man standing next to it. And then I think there started to be dirt or rocks, and started to vibrate, but whatever. They turned it off. This thing called cavitation. And Fred would say it's like a knife going through butter. It's so powerful when that water's flowing so fast, it kind of implodes on it. And keep in mind, these are holes inside that spillway that went through 2 feet of reinforced concrete. And it was 32 feet deep, 40 feet wide, and 150 feet long, and there's a man on the ladder. Okay, so that can be very powerful. Same thing happened at the Guadalupe River in Texas in 2002. There was a flood, 30 inches of rain in 1 week. This is a spillway for the river, and the river carved a canyon 1 mile long, over 50 feet deep, and hundreds of yards wide through solid limestone. And it says that what would have taken nature thousands of years to create was created in about 24 hours. Yeah, I think that nature can do things very fast. And we saw it happen at Mount St. Helens. This canyon was 1,000 feet wide, 140 feet deep, and it went through it 9 hours. Okay, 9 hours. And so that river did not cut that canyon. That river is a consequence of that canyon, just like the Grand Canyon is. And now the key for tonight again is bulging and cracking. What is it? Bulging and cracking. So what's going to bulge? It's going to be the Kaibab. As that's all getting washed away, there's no force pushing down on the Kaibab limestone. And so there's a big force underneath pushing up, so it's going to crack. It bulged and it cracked. And then the water flowed through the crack. And see how those layers are kind of pointed upright at the end? That's what's happening at Echo Cliffs and Vermilion Cliffs. They're kind of pointed upright. And so that fits. There's the Vermilion Cliffs, and that's how Red Butte's getting carved out. And the funnel floor cracks, so the river flows through that crack, and probably eating up eroding a lot of softer sediment than the Kaibab limestone. And then it undercuts Hopi Lake, which is 200 feet higher. And now that water is coming down with tremendous force. And this is from the 9th edition of Walt Brown's book. You can see this at rsr.org/HPT, hydroplate. And he says that the waterfall, Hopi's waterfall, is about 13 times higher, with possibly 100 times greater flow than the Niagara Falls. So incredibly powerful. And so it's just going to sheet erode everything on top of the Kaibab limestone, because that's too hard to cut into. And so now there's nothing pushing down on that place, and so it forms up. What's the key to Grand Canyon? Bulging and cracking. They removed all the weight where that is, so now the Kaibab Plateau forms right there. And so now you're going to get the barbed canyons, because the Kaibab Plateau is up, so now the subterranean water is flowing downhill against and then when it reaches the river, then it's going to spin around. The Kaibab upward is raised, so subsurface water flows downhill to the west and north. And then once it gets down to the bottom where the river is, it's going to make a quick U-turn, and it's going to cut through, and then all that stuff is going to sloop down with it. And there's some really, really neat pictures at the bottom of North Canyon where it's all kind of just sloped down like that. That tells me that when those layers were cut, they weren't mud yet, or they weren't stone yet. They were still soft mud. So when they were cut, they just slooped. See, that's how the whole canyon would have been if this would have happened after the flood. And so again, it's just kind of melted down like that. Okay, no more bulging and cracking. The formation of the Grand Canyon. Okay, so now that Kaibab Plateau is sheared off and it's bulged up there, and the plateau cracks. So now the river's flowing through that crack, eating up this softer sediment, and now it's cutting it at a level that's below the water table. So now all the water in the ground is flowing into the river. That's how you get the side canyons. And the northern part of the Grand Canyon, that rose 1,000 foot higher than the southern part. So that's got more water to drain out. That's why the canyons are longer to the north. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, and then the deep side canyons. How do we explain inner gorge? Okay, now this is hard crystalline granite. The river is cutting through sedimentary rock. This thing's 46 miles long. And not coincidentally, in Inner Gorge, or in Kaibab Plateau. It's flowing through that Kaibab Plateau, and there it is, yeah, 46 miles. So the river's cutting down through this softer sedimentary rock. It hits the hard granite rock. It should just spread out, but it doesn't, because what's the key to Grand Canyon? Bulging and cracking, because not only does that Kaibab Plateau crack, limestone crack, the Vishnu schist cracks. There's nothing pushing down on it, so that got in a bulging position, and then it cracked also. So then the river went through the bottom. Bulging and cracking, that's the key to all of this. And if you look at the inner gorge, it's not smooth like millions of years would put. It's pretty rough. Okay, so you got the Colorado River flowing through that crack. Okay, it's the inner gorge, it was intention. And again, you look at that, you can see some of those pictures on Google Earth. That's where Brian Nickel got a lot of these pictures. Okay, so where did all the sediment go? Okay, that haunted that guide for a long time. Well, it's coming out with tremendous force, and there's not 800 cubic miles of delta there. That delta is way too small. I mean, when you search the most powerful or most voluminous rivers in the world, it doesn't even make the top 100. And it's like a fourth of the 100, the one that does make the top 100. So it's not a mighty river compared to other ones. And it's got a small delta compared to a lot of other places. So where did all the sediment go? It went on a huge floodplain. And they say that they find large rounded boulders have been found a mile away and 100 feet above the river at Bull City, Arizona. There's Bull City. So it's, and then also Walt Brown says as you're driving west across there and you go across these river, tributaries where there's erosion, he says slow down and look. He said for 100 or 200 miles on either side of the Colorado River there, you can look into those gorges there and you're going to see big rounded boulders surrounded by sand. Okay, so that big rounded boulders means the flow was powerful, enough to move big boulders and round them. And then it stopped quickly because it didn't wash away the sand. And that would be exactly what you expect with the big, the dam, with the lakes draining with such tremendous force. And then there was a geologist out there, pretty famous one, I don't want to name names, but he had a different theory of how Grand Canyon formed. And so Walt Brown said, hey, let's go look at it. And they got a bunch of geologists, and Walt Brown took 3 days to put his evidence for his theory, like the potholes and that rock. And then they did that for 3 days, and then the other geologist, he was supposed to do 3 days to show us what supports his perspective, and he didn't have anything to show, so they went home 3 days early. And apparently he wrote an article saying that Walt Brown's theory didn't work after that. I did not mention names, but if you do want to know who that was, you can go into the beginning 9th edition. It's on page 564, so you can see who it was, and you can check it out. Okay, so here's a quick review. Okay, how did Grand Canyon form? Why isn't it everywhere else in the world? Well, because you needed 2 huge lakes on the Colorado Plateau with a bunch of potential energy. Huge. Grand Lake, double the size of Lake Michigan. Hopi Lake, about like Lake Huron. And when it went over, there was tremendous volume cutting through, going really fast, made that pothole, and then it eroded that cliff, and then things started bulging and cracking. It cut down until it hit the hard Kaibab limestone, moved a bunch of sediments so there was nothing pushing down, so that Kaibab limestone cracked, That crack went toward Hopi Lake, undercut Hopi Lake, which had a tremendous flow of water, which caused the denudation, which moved 2,000 cubic miles that were above Grand Canyon. And then again, there was nothing pushing down on the Kaibab limestone there, so that rose up to make the Kaibab Plateau, or upward, that's been interchangeable. And so then that went up and that cracked. So then the river flowed through that crack, moved all that 800 cubic miles out of the Grand Canyon, so there's nothing pushing down on that Vishnu schist. So the Vishnu schist cracks for 46 miles. That's how you get the inner gorge. Okay? So we went through the Grand Canyon facts, Grand Canyon questions. Governments failed attempt to answer those questions. They are lying to us, and we need to help them see the truth. Okay, and then we give you the real answers, and we did the review. So what's the key again? Bulging and cracking. That's the key to Grand Canyon. And if you want to learn more about this, go into rsr.org, type in Grand Canyon. It's a ball, learning about it. Or you can get Brian Nichols' Hydroplate Theory, Origin of the Grand Canyon. This stuff is available on his YouTube channel. But I encourage you to buy the DVDs, because as we can see, they can take channels down at the blink of a hat. You want to have it in your possession, and you want to support people that are doing God's work. You know, stop giving your money to Starbucks, which gives money to Planned Parenthood. Stop giving your money to, whoever, or Hollywood movies. They're not doing what they should be. Okay, so now a special thanks to Walt Brown. He's today's Isaac Newton. The more I learn about him, the more brilliant he becomes. Brian Nichol, who took that concept and made it very easy to understand. He's got the best Grand Canyon video out there, and I've seen a lot of them. Okay, and then thanks to Bob Enyart and Fred Williams, who are blessed to have him today, and also Doug McBurney. They're doing a great job with Real Science Radio that comes out every Friday. I encourage people to watch it. And also, they have a new Rumble channel. So I encourage people that they censored this talk on YouTube. So you know what you do to get even with censorship? You share it everywhere. You go and you follow this and you share it everywhere, and that's how you fight censorship. In Taiwan, they don't watch China's news to see what's going on. They see what China's censoring, so then they really know what's going on. They realize they're getting propaganda. Okay, now here's our call to action. Okay, I did this at a technical college, government one, and creation won, 16-6. And as somebody was putting he stroked under creation, and I asked him, why'd you put it there? Why'd you pick creation? He said, well, that's where everybody else was. So you got 15 to 20% on each side of the spectrum. That's not going to change. We're just too entrenched. We're not changing. But the middle 60 to 70%, they'll go wherever the flow is the best. So what we need to do is make creation the flow that makes the most sense, and bring it up at places. I got this email from somebody. We had converted a wood-burning fireplace into a gas-burning one. And I got this email, and she basically says, I've been praying that God would send intelligent Christian clients who would talk to him. You are an answer to prayer. Your conversation with Dan has opened his mind. I believe he's been watching your videos a bit because he shared one with me. And so I emailed back, it's like, thanks for the encouraging words, but which video did he share with you? I was very curious, and he shared the hydroplate theory. I had 20 minutes to talk to the Rotary Club, and I squeezed the hydroplate into 20 minutes, if you can believe that. And that's the one that he shared. And again, if you're interested in the hydroplate, we got an online conference September 21st to the 23rd, and I encourage you to watch it because it colors in all the details. I mean, I had the dots connected. Okay, the Bible's true, the government's lying. Okay, I got that, the dots connected. But when I heard RSR, Walt Brown Week, when I listened to that, that colored in all the details. It's like, oh, I can see exactly why this world is the way it is. And it explains 25 major features. Oh, we got that red thing? That's hanging at St. Cloud State right now. We put it as one of our creation, our student organization events. So this is what's at the St. Cloud State. Answers to scientific problems, because they can't answer this. Origin of Grand Canyon, we saw, they have no clue how that happened. Nerves and dinosaur bones. Yeah, that can't happen. They can't last millions of years. And by the way, the guy who's doing that, Mark Armitage, he used to teach at a college at this, and he was the head of the lab of this electronic microscopes. And he found bone cells in a Triceratops horn. And he published it in a secular journal. And they fired him. He didn't make any conclusion, any interpretation. He says, hey guys, found a bone cell. They fired him. He sued him for wrongful termination and he won, but he's not teaching there, so who really won? And instead of sucking his thumb the rest of his life, he's finding nerves in dinosaur bones. And he's teaching homeschoolers this. We tried to get him to speak at our club like you guys do. He said, I'll come if you can line up 3 homeschool labs and have like, I don't know, 50 kids in each lab or something like that. And he'll teach the kids how to use the microscope and he'll show them dinosaur nerves. And then I was able to be trained in to help them with that. But I would encourage you guys to get him in here. He's really good. Okay, fusing past iron, they can't answer that. Cubanite in comets. Cubanite is formed in scalding hot water. Hydroplate predicted what they'd find in comets, honestly. That's Kevin Lee's talk on Saturday. Frozen mammoth standing up. How does that happen? Any deer hunters here? Anybody? Okay. Do dead things tip over or do they stand up? They tip over. This thing was buried alive. Okay, peanut-shaped asteroids, rounded boulders in Comet 67P. How do you get rounded boulders in space? You know, if things collide, they're going to have jagged edges. The only way you get rounded boulders is if it's going through a fast flow of water, and hydroplate theory explains that perfectly. Okay, rocks from the Earth on the moon. How'd that happen? Hydroplate. And carbon-14 and coal, fossils, and diamonds, and shells on Mount Everest. So again, what you're saying, everybody works for Walt Brown. All scientists work for Walt Brown, because whenever they find something new, it just validates the theory. And so with that, there's some resources on the, again, I encourage you to go to the Answers in Genesis, and there's some DVDs in the back for a donation of any amount. And again, you can see all these things. I got a Solidify Your Faith YouTube channel. I've been censored a few times there, so I got a Rumble channel called Education Not Indoctrination. Also a revival of truth, just for those talks. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, well, I guess that opens up the question and answer session. So, if you have a question, we see one here. I'll get to you in just a second.
I saw the hand in the, I'm sorry.
I will bring the mic to you, and don't ask the question until you get the mic so that everybody can hear what your question is. All right, so here we go.
If you would, could you go into more detail as to where all the sandstone from the Grand Canyon ended up going to?
Okay. Yeah.
Was it just the western part of Arizona, or did it go elsewhere too?
No, most of it went into the Gulf of California. It's coming out with such tremendous force. It's out in the middle of the Gulf of California. It's coming out. I mean, usually the ocean water is going to slow stuff down, so the sediment's going to go there. This is coming out in a big tidal wave, and it just flows way out there. And I think that it was like up to 3,000 cubic miles of it is out there. Some of it went into the imperial sand dunes of California. Walt Brown says when you do isotopes of that sand, he thinks you're going to find it comes from Grand Canyon. And why isn't that sand turning into sandstone like all that other stuff? Well, it's not mixed with the quartz, okay, with the silica. And so there's going to be, and then there's also that floodplain coming down the Colorado River, which could have been 400 miles wide with all that water coming down. And you can drive over, he says, look, when you drive over creek beds as you're going east to west in that area, see how far you drive before you stop seeing big boulders in sediment and sand. He thinks that's the big floodplain too. So that 800 cubic miles got spread out maybe on 100 miles on either side of the Colorado River. I think most of it probably went into the Gulf of California, and then there's still a little bit and some in the imperial sand dunes. So that's my best guess at it. But I think that's what hydroplate would say. I think I'm quoting that pretty accurately, I think. And I'm not a scientist, I'm just a megaphone. I listen to the smart guys and tell people what they're saying.
When you said like Heron, do you mean Huron?
I don't, what, when I said what?
Well, it was spelled H-E-R-O-N, and do you
Yeah.
mean H-U-R-O-n?
Oh, that could be.
Okay,
Yeah,
you mean
one,
up by the Great Lakes?
one of the Great Lakes. I'll check
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's all right, I was just like, should I know a different one?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'll change that. So yeah, I
And also,
meant.
it's Holbrook, Arizona, not Howe.
Oh, okay. Holbrook. Okay, thank you. I'll have to, Fred, take a note of that. Holbrook and Heron. Yeah, spelling's not my strong suit. And I had a hard time with Tuba City. I mean, it's just, there was a question in the back. One of those young men had a question. I don't know if they still have one. Do you guys still have your question? Yeah.
Is there any water left in those ancient lakes?
No, no, it's very arid. And that's probably where those cliff dwellers were living. You know, there's probably water coming out, wherever that is. There's probably subterranean water coming out, and they had a civilization around that water, and then the water dried up, and then they moved. Is what I think happened there. But yeah, they're bone dry.
Do atheists know about water jet cutting as done in manufacturing?
Do atheists know about water cutting manufacturing?
Water jet cutting
Water
as
jet.
done in manufacturing?
Jet cutting and manufacturing?
Because that's what I hear you talking about, and you could cut through the hardest steel or any material with water jet cutting
You can cut through the hardest.
very quickly.
I believe it. I believe
So I
it.
think maybe they never heard of it.
Yeah. We need you to get out here. We need you to come up here and start sharing. I think there's a big demand for people to get up behind microphones and start sharing this information. We need to be bold like Bob Enyart was. And when I started this, it's like, I was just, I don't know, I got very angry because I had to go to Glen Rose, Texas to see those dinosaur footprints with the human footprints. And I was angry because I had to go to Texas to learn that. And it's like, why doesn't everybody know this? Why isn't this common knowledge? Why doesn't somebody do something? And you might be real close to that. You know, we need to get that information out. And I thought, well, I'll prepare and perhaps my chance will come. And just take a step and God will lead you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for your attention. It's been a tremendous blessing to be here, no doubt.
All right, well, so now we start the boring part. Announcements, that sort of thing. But once I get done with that, feel free to accost Brian and ask him questions and open up discussion and whatever it is you want to do. I'm sure he will be glad to field your questions. Also, he has a pretty nice display in the back and materials and DVDs and stuff to sell, which he mentioned some of during the talk. So
They're thank yous for a donation of any amount. That's what they are.
yeah, so if you heard that, they're thank yous for a donation of any amount. So so feel free to pick up some of those videos and give a generous donation. All right, so announcements. The next thing coming up is on a week from today, Friday, September 15th, is going to be the Dinosaur Ridge walking tour that I believe I announced it last month. And so if you want to go on that, I would recommend that you get onto the website as soon as possible and get your name in the hat. We've had, so far as of this morning, there were about 194 people that signed up for it. And the slots are going pretty fast. I'd originally set it up so that we had them for 160. So I just kind of made the groups a little bigger, so now we've got room, a little bit more room. So If you want to go on that, it's free, but also we're asking that you give some kind of a donation. Because whatever Rocky Mountain Recreation Fellowship does, it takes money, and you know very well that anything that you do now takes a lot more money than it used to take. So we would welcome any donations that you can give. So in order to sign up for the Dinosaur Ridge Tour, the best thing to do is just go on our website, youngearth.org. And on the right side, just below the speaker announcement, you'll find a little caption there that says Dinosaur Ridge Tour. Just click on print flyer, and there's complete instructions there on how to sign up for it. Signing up just involves sending an email to the email address that it gives there, giving your name and how many people are in your group, and then one of our board members, Ed Jolman, will field that question and figure out how to get you in a group that still has space in it. So, let's see, the next thing that we have going on is October 13th at the October meeting. Brian Catalucci will be speaking on information theory, and just if you were at Fred's information talk last year, this isn't going to be just a rehash of what you've already heard. Of course, Brian will approach the information question from a little different angle, so you get another perspective on it. Then on November 10th, we have Joel Tay will be speaking from Creation Ministries International. This should be a very interesting and dynamic talk. Joel is quite a personality and is very interesting to listen to. We do not have a topic decided yet, but it will be something fun and interesting, as is everything that we do here. On December 8th, that's for our December meeting, we will have Paul Homan from the U.S. Air Force Academy. He will be speaking on climate change, and he'll probably be giving you an update. He spoke here, I don't know, 3 years ago. Fantastic talk he gave at that time. He will be giving a talk. He will cover a similar topic, climate change, of course. But as you're probably well aware, that climate change, people have become much more shrill in their tones, and they're pushing it harder and with greater amounts of media force behind it. But it's still as much a big of a lie as it was when they first came up with it. So yes, mankind has a small effect on climate issues, but to produce the major temperature swings that they're predicting is just unmitigated nonsense. And but they're getting a lot of mileage out of it. There are a lot of people that are believing them, and they're getting a lot of political mileage out of it. They're establishing power bases and moving money into their own coffers using climate change. So that should be a very useful and interesting talk. Okay, another thing is we are sponsoring tours again this year of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and we can run groups in there. I don't know exactly what the dates are going to be. Last year we had a tour in end of January, and one in, I believe, was end of March, and one in May. Be looking for that on our website. As soon as we have a date on something, we will announce that on the website. We always need volunteers for things, and so there is a volunteer sign-up sheet in the back. If you would like to volunteer to do something like a one-time event or or an ongoing activity, either one, please put your name and phone number or email on the list. We have a list in the back on the tables. And if you put your name on the list and I don't call you right away, it's not because we don't have a use for you, it's because we don't have anything in the works at the moment. But eventually I'll get around to giving you a call if you can deal with that. All right, so I already mentioned that Brian Lauer has an amazing table set up back there, some materials to sell. Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship, we've got a table right next to it. We've got past foundations. I still have a few compendiums of the Age of the Earth series of President's Corners that I did a few years back in foundations. So those are all free for the taking. I have a paper on authority, how authority started with God at the creation and has worked its way into mankind. I think that's interesting. I wrote it, but if you haven't gotten a copy of that and you'd like to read through it, it's about 40 pages. So get a cup of coffee when you read it. And so there are several copies of that back there still also. Finally, we have some food and drink for fellowship. And so hang out and talk to people and eat, drink, and no, don't be merry. I mean, be joyful in the Lord and thankful. All right, so with that, I did mention that I might comment on this 1 Peter chapter 3 passage. I think what I'd like to just point out on this is it says that the scoffers come scoffing. Where is this coming you promised? Ever since the fathers died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation. I mean, that right there is a prophecy of uniformitarianism, which is the thing that drives evolutionism. They're just saying that everything goes on as it has from the beginning. Well, the uniformitarian idea is the present is the key to the past. So they look at the present rates of processes and things that are going on, and they extrapolate those into the past for hundreds, thousands, or even millions of times past the baseline that they have of recent history, and then they surmise things in the past and use that as a reason to ignore the Bible. And this was prophesied by Peter 2,000 years ago. So this is a really powerful prophecy. The other thing I wanted to mention about this is that in the days of Noah, which scripture I gave last month, people are going to be saying the days of the coming of the Son of Man, that is the second return of Christ, will be just as they were in the days of Noah. People will be eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage right up until the day Noah entered the ark and the door was closed and the flood swept them away, and they didn't know what was going on until all that happened. Well, this prophecy is saying that the same thing is going to happen when the Lord returns. But right now, figuratively speaking, the door to the ark is open, and everybody on this whole planet is welcome to come to the ark and to be saved. And of course, the ark is Christ Jesus, his completed work on the cross. He said, I am the way and the truth and the life. So the way to the ark, the way through the door is through Christ Jesus. And the word has been out there. His word has gone to the ends of the earth. Everybody has had an opportunity to hear it, almost everybody. We have a lot of very hardworking Christians out there, missionaries who are still translating Bibles into all kinds of different languages that are still out there. People are still doing a lot of work getting the gospel out. But by and large, the gospel has been made available to almost everybody on this planet. The door is open, the Lord's arms are open, and he's saying, come in. So please, if you don't know the Lord, call on his name tonight. It'll be the best decision you've ever made, and the Lord will hear the heartfelt cry to Him. So, all right, I'll shut up now and let you all get started on whatever else you had planned for the evening. So with that, we adjourn. Good night. Thank you.